Minutes. I shouldn't have.
Well, thank you.
Maybe that should be the focus for the conservation board's conservation.
That's right. Birds tonight.
Happy spring, everyone, or official day, summer, I guess. Unofficial start of summer yesterday,
Is it?
Monday. Memorial Day, isn't that the unofficial?
Well, I
start?
said,
No,
I guess
yeah,
this is
different,
from
yeah.
an event point of view,
Yeah.
not from a
No,
final
no,
or
nothing.
meteorological
No.
point of view.
Well, that probably happened 2 months ago.
Yeah, well, and then there's the longest day of the year.
So I don't think we have any guests to introduce. We have a quorum, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, 5 is here. So there were minutes that I shared with everyone. Thank you, Lauren, for getting those minutes from 2 months ago out and this month's very quickly. So appreciate that. I'm assuming you saw my one comment.
Yep, I changed that.
So 2 months ago's meeting, I wasn't here, so if folks want to discuss about, assume you may have looked at them.
Oh, I think I did. I had one.
They look pretty good to me. I'll move them.
Yeah, they looked fine to me.
Is that a second, Steve?
Yes,
Actually, can we even vote on them if we don't have a voting quorum?
oh, that's true. How many do we need?
I wasn't, I mean, I guess I was gonna vote to approve, oh, shouldn't really, I guess, but I don't know. Have the rules keeper,
As long as we have a quorum, can't we?
I think
But
we
we
can
don't
vote.
have a
I think
quorum.
but we have a quorum, I guess.
We have
We
a
have
quorum.
a quorum. We just have one person who wanted to recuse himself. because he hadn't been.
Oh,
We'll still vote for, and I'll just recuse myself and we'll call it. If anyone complains, we'll do it again next month.
yep.
If Jean puts her head in, she can. Late.
I assume she's gonna be here since she sent stuff about the font thing and Nancy will probably be here, so we can revisit it if anyone has issues, but I think it'll be all right.
It looked good.
And then last month's minutes, I was here, and so I thought they looked good. I just clarified that one section because I think that's an important distinction.
Yeah, I don't know milkweed from garlic mustard, so
Which is fair enough.
not weed.
But I'm assuming the discussion was about keeping
There
themselves.
was one thing that I said wrong, which is that Gina Cassidy, this is my report from the Climate Smart folks. Gina Cassidy is sort of doing the organizing now, but we did elect a new chair. So I will have to get that to you. And I mean, this is accurate as to what I said.
Right.
It's not accurate as to what is the case.
Okay,
So we still had, at this point, we had to elect a new chair.
okay.
Gina was being administratively.
So maybe just change that to Gina Cassidy will be.
Convening the next meeting and we have to, and a new chair will be elected.
Okay.
You gave us information
Yeah.
current at the time.
That's
And that's the way the minutes are supposed to be. What I thought said,
yes.
that's fine.
So in this minutes, you can say, Ann Clark misspoke last time.
You didn't misspeak.
It's what you do with mine.
Slightly misreported.
Conditions have changed since,
Issues.
well, I guess you did say that it was, that you. were chair.
That was sort of the way I understood it
Okay.
then. All right.
So this new group will be convened by Gina Cassidy when,
And then.
A new chair will be
new chair
elected.
has Got to be elected.
okay,
We're trying to behave as a committee or, actually, we've not written out what our organization is because it's not had that. So we were talking about what the bylaws, going
Should be, yeah.
of conservation boards. We're not going to be a board. It would be a committee.
Yeah,
We don't know. Straight.
Okay, well, thank you. Did we approve them and
Oh, I move that we approve the minutes.
I'll second it.
all in favor? Aye.
I don't know if I probably am gonna abstain since I wasn't here for the April meeting.
Fair enough. Thanks, Steve. There you go, 4-0 on both of them. So Craig, I know you sent um, a paragraph about your ag committee meeting.
Yeah,
Sounds like you're mostly zoning. Discussion on zoning.
yeah, it was,
There's someone from the zoning committee. Only.
from the planning board was there,
Oh, someone from the planning board. Okay.
and he wanted some input on,
Who's on that zoning rewrite?
yeah, and
I get
he
the,
wanted some input on what the agricultural people thought about the,
Mhm.
you know, lot sizes and that kind of thing. Basically, they were smaller, you can keep them the better, because large lots just make more sprawl,
Sure.
so. That was kind of the consensus among them.
Yeah.
My understanding was the ask to the consultant was to identify a way to come up with language. And now I'm using my own words on this, but basically to mimic some of the European models where if, let's say, you're gonna have 10 acres that you're gonna allow use of, instead of allowing like one house per acre, they'd have to have all 10 houses on 2 acres, but then the other 8 acres would have to somehow be protected for open space. Is that what does that accurately reflect your takeaway?
Some of that was discussed, but the ag committee members thought in the ag districts where it's designated as ag, they didn't like that either, because they felt that would chop the fields up more too.
Or just take more area
Yeah.
from the fields.
Yeah. Because they're trying to keep contiguous acreage, you know,
Right.
for farming.
Was there any specification that the area set aside for X houses had to be contiguous with those houses, or do you remember, just,
No, I don't think so.
if you could easily reach it,
Yeah,
or I don't know whether. One question would be an interesting one is whether or not buffer zones on waterways can count toward that area.
mhm.
So is this spring just a way to, for the town to try to reassess its limit on, one house per 10 acres and keep that 10-acre lot size, but try to make that more dense and then protect?
No, I wouldn't say try anything. I had heard an update because I didn't make the last meeting. Dan and I have been kind of taking turns. Is the discussion was there's this big focus on providing more opportunity for housing, and then while also trying to be respectful that we don't want to just see urban sprawl. So the summary I had heard was that there was a interest in asking the consultant on how to develop language that would say, look, if a farmer wants to sell his property for land for development, for example, as an example, instead of it being like, okay, your 10 acres are going to be split up into 10 1-acre building lots, it would be like, okay, then there needs to be densification So you might still have like a 10-to-1 ratio, but the houses would have to be close together so that you maintain open space. So, which is the way my understanding is very heavily how that's modeled in England and France. So that you have the houses close together, but they maintain that open land for the animals and nature. So that's what I heard. So I was wondering if that was the same takeaway. I heard that there was
One thing that came out.
doesn't
was-
seem to be anything anybody likes, you know,
If you're gonna-
some people want like a
yeah,
lot more
density,
development and some people want more open.
If you're gonna have that density, you've gotta have. You know, sewer. That meets health department. Water and. Most of the town doesn't have those hookups at this time.
Right.
So it would be hard to. Get that kind of density. Like they're talking.
Yeah, I think this was more of a trying to understand, like, is there a way to do it to try to encourage, you know, even if it's three houses, like put them together and then have 3 open acres rather than have this, you know, if you have people that are trying to split up their land, how do you cut down on the sprawl of just houses? While not discouraging fair housing opportunity.
Well, it sounds like the ag community would rather have 5 houses and 2 acres and leave the other 8 acres in ag land. But
Yeah.
anyway. But I don't want to start speaking for what I think the ag committee might want, so. But we can certainly discuss, we can add our take on cluster housing to the agenda for future discussion either later today or at another meeting.
Yeah.
They've always wanted the cluster housing. Is the issue how big the cluster gets to be?
Yeah, and it's. Dependent.
Well, right now, there's nothing in there that encourages or requires it. So there's the current zoning doesn't push for that.
It was supposed to with the easement system. That was the whole point of the easement system, was to encourage cluster housing, that if you had a big property and you put the houses together, close together, then you could build more than you would otherwise be able to do on that amount of property.
But I think you're talking generally, we're talking specifically to ag land.
So make it even narrower for the ag land.
No, I think it was just. Craig was filling us in on the ag committee report and Spring asked a question about
Yeah,
this cluster development in ag land, and that was the discussion, so. I think,
Caroline farmers want zoning.
well, I think farmers probably want the same, but let's just revisit that in a few minutes. We can come back to cluster housing. And add that as new business maybe, if you want to have a discussion about it. Thank you. Spring, anything from the town board?
There's a lot of discussion last month around ongoing efforts with Dryden Fiber. That's very, very active and time-consuming piece right now. Zoning, I think we've covered that. And yeah, nothing new, I don't think, is the main thing. You know, there was ongoing discussion around the I think I told you guys last time, but bids come in around the rail trail bridge. So whether or not any of those bids are actionable or whether we have to go out to bid is information I'm waiting to hear in the next couple days. So, but that's exciting
Which
that we've
bridge?
come that far.
The rail
No,
trail?
the rail trail bridge over Route 13.
Okay, so you got bids for construction.
We got bids. Whether any of them are actionable is something
What does that mean?
I'm waiting on an update on.
Well, is the town building that or is the state building that?
The town is building it, but there's a lot of state grant money,
Oh.
a lot of state grant money. So the town's building it, but I don't have the details to answer what does that mean. I just know that bids came in and there's discussion on whether or not we can accept them the way they came in, or if we need further assessment from the bids before we accept them to make sure that how they were bid meets the DEC requirements. So, or DOT requirements. So I don't want to misspeak, but more to come on that in the next few days.
Well, it seems strange. We build it, but it's over a state road, so our state engineer's gonna be assessing.
Oh, you always have, it doesn't matter what bridge you do, the DOT has to weigh in on it.
Okay,
You don't
okay,
even want to see. the
Probably if you make a
process
bridge, yeah.
behind
So,
the DOT.
not doing it.
DOT work permit.
but yeah, and
Swear on it.
lots of good activity with the Dryden Fiber. I also just read an email that one of the members from Dryden Fiber, who's been a long-term member, has to step down. So they are going to be looking for an additional rep on the Dryden Fiber committee. If you guys want to jump in and throw your hat in the ring or spread the word.
Can I get to my house quicker if I do?
No.
No, it was gonna get to my house 3 years ago. It's still as far away as ever.
Strung right there for us and they're not moving.
It's going to move a lot. It's going to
Right.
start moving a lot faster. This new company that we have is a real powerhouse and they move very quickly. But to be completely fair, part of that $10 million grant from the state was heavily focused on making sure Town of Caroline is also covered. So we've got a clock ticking. The good news is that they're going to get more done than they even planned to do in the same amount of time. So things
And
should
no one
actually get
comes
to
in
people's
Town of
houses faster
Caroline.
than expected.
I want to say the people in the town of Caroline actually probably need it more than we do. I mean, they're really unserviced, truly
Well, then they
unserviced.
could have come up with this themselves.
We are also for all
Well,
purposes.
so when you look at the map of how much there is left in Dryden versus how much there is left in Caroline, there's a lot in Caroline. But because this change in company, things are moving, they're much faster, they're a much more robust firm. So you're gonna see things moving a lot quicker than they were before.
I like that they had discovered errors in the past, but they're fixing them. So
Yep.
that's good, that they can, and they're doing it.
Yeah.
All
Yeah,
right, we'll
they're
get
doing
good
it right.
fiber.
That's, I mean, there is that.
Yeah,
They don't have to go back and retrofit.
Thanks, Spring. Did Jason say anything about the letter he got from DEC about the dam on Dryden Reservoir / Lake 3 weeks ago?
Bear with me. There was a brief chat about it at the last town board meeting. But let me double check. But basically, it's not our dam, so
No, I know. So
there
the
was
gist-
nothing actionable for
Oh.
us.
I know
but
what
do
the
you have-
I know what the email
Okay.
said. I was just wondering if he brought it up or if he's just holding it to himself.
It
'Cause-
was mentioned, but I can't tell you that I heard anything
okay.
gripping. So do you want to share?
Well, it's not gripping, but the DEC reached out to him several weeks ago and said that 100% design for a new dam is completed, but the new price tag is $3.5 million. Please reach out to discuss options. And so
Ooh.
DEC is waiting for Jason to get back.
What was the previous thought? Amount?
I don't know what the previous was, $1 million or $1.5 million.
Right, okay. So we're-
That was 3.4 million.
Ooh.
The new
So in the last week, two separate landowners on Dryden Lake have contacted me to ask me about the dam. Because they've been told that the DEC is not going to replace it at all because they can't afford it. So perhaps spring some discussions at the town level would, and then with some of the landowners on Dryden Lake would be very helpful. Because I do
Yep.
think there are perhaps some rumors flying around about what may happen. Currently, the landowners believe the dam is just going to be left to decay. And whatever happens, happens because the DEC can't afford whatever their current replacement cost is.
Well, it wouldn't, I don't think they would let it decay. So at some point it would fail a dam safety inspection and the DEC would tell the DEC, because the DEC owns the dam. So if it got a deficiency order from the DEC's Division of Dam Safety, then DEC Fish and Wildlife, who owns the dam, would have to repair or remove.
No,
Or they would basically have to either repair it and bring it up to standards to the tune of $3.4 million or decommission it, which means take it out.
Under-
Which I think is, so I know one of the landowners called DEC and what they sort of told them was option B.
I think that the DEC, who doesn't have any money or as much money, is
They have no money.
more inclined to remove it than spend $3.4
Correct.
million on
Yes.
it. 'Cause
Yeah,
There's no real benefit from their eyes for Fish and Wildlife resources. But so anyway, so I was just curious, because I knew that email had gone to Jason. I was just wondering if he had shared it with the town board, if he had taken action on it. I mean, basically, it was an invite to him. It sounded like it was an invite to him to reach out to DEC to discuss, and they haven't heard anything. So
So if memory serves, did you once say in a previous meeting that you thought it would be better environmentally not to replace the dam?
I would have zero problem with taking the dam out. I think
Okay.
you do both ways, but I don't think decommissioning a dam is a bad thing in any way.
Except to know, somebody would need to evaluate what has happened around there as a result of it being there that long, and then what would happen with the dam. Because that's not just instantly returning to,
No,
X years ago.
No, it would be time. I mean, the dam's been there for over 100.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, is the dam there? I did not think the dam was there because of flood risk. I thought it was there more to hold the water because of the ice harvesting and other things that used to happen in the dam, in the lake.
I don't know why it was first built, but
it was for a mill, I think.
it was an old mill dam.
There was a mill there right on the end, right there at the outlet. So I think the dam was built to power the mill, the original.
And I don't know the story, how DEC ended up with the land. I don't know any of the history of it. I'm just. I was just asking, I knew that email had gone out, so I was just wondering.
Yeah, I'll follow up with him.
Lake Park becomes Dryden Swamp Park.
Yeah, pretty much. Wood park.
So the other thing is, if another entity comes up with the money, can that be directed for the DEC to do the work with this alternate source of money?
That's probably what Jason would have to find out when he talks to them.
Have you ever heard of them doing that?
I think if someone offered to pay for it, they'd be happy to accept it.
Well, sometimes there's things where they can't accept it for a particular project. That there's really strange red tape rules about stuff sometimes.
There are, especially in New York State, but I can't answer that question,
Okay.
but I think it would behoove the town, especially if, the majority of the town, it sounds like, wants to keep the dam or replace the dam. It behooves the town to reach out to DEC and figure out what
Yeah,
next steps should be.
discussions.
Start figuring out how to pass a hat. Or
Yeah,
leveraging
thing-
politics or whatever you need to do to force the state to change.
yeah, I'll talk to Jason about it. One thing I think is like one of the first big things we've heard the DEC be like, let it fail.
The DEC is not gonna let it fail. That's not an option. So it's not gonna catastrophically fail. They'll either.
They can pull it out.
But that's not letting it fail. That's different. It would be a
Okay,
controlled removal.
Yeah.
removal. Yeah, I know there's a lot of, one of the last county updates we had, they were talking about the countywide like committees. And there's a lot of angst around the budget coming up the next few years, which I don't think is a surprise to anybody on this call. So,
Another thing.
it's not surprising.
The town created an account to allow people to donate money for recreation. And And I had been pressing, even before that, I had been pressing them to come up with an account to allow people to donate for conservation. And after I found out they created one for recreation, but not for conservation. And I said, well, why not do that? And apparently they said, oh, you have to go through all this rigmarole to set up the
You do.
account. And that you can't, no one can donate for something without having such an account. I think it might be worthwhile to go through the rigmarole and come up with an account and let people know they could donate for town conservation. That there is an.
Yeah, I
that.
think part of it is there'd have to be very clear oversight on how those funds, what they can be accepted for use, and then who gets to vote on how they get used.
Yeah,
So
can be done though.
I'm sure it can. Would it be this committee that then decides how to spend the money?
I don't care if it's this committee or not. I just think there should be a way that local folk in the town can offer to donate money for conservation purposes in the town. Much the same as they're allowed now to donate money for recreational purposes in the town. And I don't know who and how the rec people are deciding either. I don't know if it's the town board or, you know, I don't know who, but currently, if I wanted to donate 2 million for, which of course I don't even have, but although people have been cold calling me trying to buy my farm, land, my farmland, but anyway, yeah, that I couldn't do it.
Well, I think the first step would be the town would need to have a conservation fund that they pay out of for conservation measures, which to my knowledge, they don't have.
Well, that's exactly it.
Well,
that's
no,
what
but
to say.
you need,
Well,
well, you're talking about somebody,
if so,
you're talking about
would-
setting up a fund for people to donate to, but the town doesn't even have a mechanism to pay for conservation. They don't-
Yes, I'm aware of that, but you know, part of that is that,
Let's, next time I send out an email asking for agenda items, add it to the agenda item.
well, because
So this really doesn't have, like I said, tangentially has something to do with the dam, but. We're gonna move on. We can circle back to it later.
we don't have to. I mean, it's
Okay.
just that, you know, I brought it up over the years.
Yeah, you
This is-
have, I know, we talked about it years ago.
So I think you should do some research and figure out how the town can set it up.
The town knows how to set it up because they set it up for the rec. After I tried to get it for conservation, they went and set one up for rec. I mean, I said, I wanted it for conservation. They went and set one up for recreation and then told me, oh, it's hard.
Also, go to the town and set one up for conversation, conservation.
I'll donate words for the.
Thank you, Spring.
conversation.
So if you can just ask Jason how the town's gonna proceed and
Yep.
I think.
I'll get that information. I'll also talk to Amanda again about how the recreation fund got set up. Sometimes you have to have a donation to set up an account. It all depends. So let me see what I can find out.
Okay. Any other committee reports? Steve, you got anything? EMC?
No, I wasn't able to go, of course, to the May EMC meeting because I was closing down my office. Did anybody go to the meeting which was held at Stewart Park? You know, that's where everybody, you know, from all the different CBs throughout the county get together. Nobody?
Did good, I couldn't do it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
moving boxes.
So anyhow, that was the EMC meeting for
Okay.
May. So
Did anybody go to the zoning, committee thing? I mean, that was
1st of May?
the 1st of May, yeah.
No.
Okay, because, I mean, I had let you know that I couldn't at the beginning, but it was just before Maryland, so.
Well, it sounds like cluster housing was the main topic. So
Okey doke. Any addition to the agenda other than cluster housing?
Well, I guess we were talking about conservation things, right? But conservation accounts, you can say that was an addition. So are we still talking cluster housing or are we done?
We're gonna get there again. We're gonna go to climate smart grants first. So. Ann sent an email out. So DEC is very confusing, right? So the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation has all these different branches. So this climate smart, they have $22 million here for grants. But the Division of Fish and Wildlife that manages the dam here doesn't
Doesn't have any money.
have money to rehab the dam. So people say DEC and think it's one entity, but the way the state works is they're all in these little silos. And money can't go from
Grant
silo A to
money's
silo C.
always in silos.
But even within, like, the Office of Dam Safety is completely different than, so they're in Albany. You know, it's just, it's weird, it's hard working with them. It's hard getting anything done, it's hard understanding all their processes, but. Anyway, so there's a grant opportunity here that if somebody who really wants to save a dam.
What's the grant?
It's the Climate Smart Communities Grant Program, and you can go online and it immediately warns you that tonight, and only tonight, system maintenance may impact the availability of several applications, but anyway, it is full of facts. Round 8 of the Climate Smart Communities Grant Program is open. They have 2 informational webinars coming up on the 9th and 14th.
What kind of grants are they?
They are able to include grants, where's my?
Eligible projects are reducing flood risk by relocating or retrofitting critical infrastructure.
Yeah.
Hey, I think we got it.
Emissions from food waste,
So
feasibility.
So the advantage is they already have a design report, 100% design, so you don't need to redo the design. So, but it's a 50% match, so the town would have to come up with 1.7 million,
Which is what they were.
which is
close
half
to
of
like.
the, anyway, it's an option if somebody in the town wanted to feel motivated to save the dam.
But does this dam actually prevent or reduce the risk of flooding? I'm just asking.
Dam were to fail catastrophically, there would be a risk downstream. And I don't think it's a high hazard dam. I think it's a class A dam.
But it would, I mean, any dam is doing something to reduce some flooding. They don't say how.
Is it?
Flooding.
No, only if it has freeboard.
I mean, not
Yeah,
all dams
it's in
reduce
storage.
flooding. Some of them just hold water
Yeah.
back for other uses
Well,
like fishing.
When we rebuild this, we could rebuild it to have freeboard.
You don't want to get into building flood control projects, no.
Okay.
That opens all kinds of.
I mean, the
Don't wanna get
big
into-
Dryden Dam keeps flooding from happening, but
No, it doesn't keep flooding from happening. It reduces the risk of a major flood in a major event, but there's no guarantee
Okay.
you get a major event that overtops the flood control, and then all the development that's happened in the floodplain because of this dam then gets wiped out, and people say, oh, but, well, we need to build a bigger dam.
On the other hand, it's a difficult dam, weather conditions, the climate is making it that things that were okay dams before are not okay dams now, and in spite of the fact they haven't said it's a failing dam, it still can be at risk because of the climate change. So maybe we could qualify for this money. Especially since we're already a silver climate smart community.
Well, might be one thing, or maybe there's another project. With making sure that the wetlands get saved in various places with impact. Reducing flood risk.
Is that where they?
Well, there's the whole tension between recreational fields and wetlands and.
Oh, Minimum, right out back.
Yeah,
That can be solved if we can find some good place for rec fields.
yeah. Another ag field, let's turn it into. They approached us about
Really?
our field on Highland School Road when we owned it. And I said, come on. No way. Nobody's gonna go out there to do it, first of all. A long time ago. before I
How far is it? It's what, 5 miles? 4 miles?
It's 4 miles maybe. But you know, we argue about walking a mile. And no, the parking lot's too far away because it's 100 yards or something like that.
And yeah, well, I mean, really good rec fields are usually located not that far
And
from.
ours is the old tile has failed and it was all tiled and I've got a stream through it.
Okay, so anything that's tiled, you already know it's wet.
It's all- It's true, it's tiled.
There's a reason it's tiled. Because they wanted to farm and they couldn't, and they figured they could alter the geography.
That's why they started putting corn in there, because it was too wet.
So I
Anyway.
don't know how we would, I mean, he's almost goes to Nancy's point about setting up a fund for content. So if the town were to apply for, I guess the town applies for grants and spends grant money, so they can do that, so. But I don't know don't know who would do the applying, because someone in the town would have to be willing to.
Climate Smart Committee should get on it, right?
They have people in the Climate Smart Committee who are very good at writing grants.
They've done it a number of times. And,
Yeah, the other thing to do is, we could always do the application. We would just need the town board to agree to submit the grant.
Right,
Well, yeah, of course, because they're gonna have to think about how they're coming up with the other million.
well, the whole grant thing, just to say, I mean, obviously, we've not got a clear idea of what it would be. The grant deadline is it's in July.
End of July.
30th of July or
31st.
31st July. And there's these webinars which are supposed to clarify what they're after, I guess. One thing is, I think I think I could offer to make sure that I go to that one on June 9th.
10 a.m.
Yeah.
Well, I guess like
I'll do that.
if someone from this board wants to think about a project to apply for, we need to do that quickly, almost before our next meeting, because, I mean, we could have ideas hashed out before then, so you have ideas either come prepared to discuss it at our next meeting or send out emails and we can discuss it.
I think if we send out an email to everybody listing what the topics are that grants can be applied for, so we can all think about that.
Yeah, well, you can, I mean, Ann sent the email out a couple of days ago with the RFP, the request for proposals, so we can all look at that independently and
Yeah,
see what might work, and then.
There's all kinds of sheets, fact sheets and things, and
I didn't get a chance to open that yet.
So as
But I didn't delete it. It wasn't among the things I deleted.
So I think as a town, you have to be, I mean, if there's 8 different ideas that are all good ideas that people, I don't think the town can apply for 8 grants, I don't think.
No, usually just
that's-
one, you pick up
Right.
one.
So if somebody really feels strongly about the dam, this is an opportunity to get money for the dam and run with that. If there are other things that are near and dear to your hearts, then you can lobby for that and just, if we want to support something and try to see it through, we need to get working on it.
Do you think it would be useful if I suggested to the Climate Smart Committee that we have a special get together just to discuss this?
I think it's great.
I mean, I can certainly give it a try. They've been interested in meeting with.
When's their next meeting?
Theirs is on the 3rd Tuesday. I think it's the 3rd Tuesday.
So it was last week, so it'd be,
Is it? Yeah,
So it was last week you went?
yeah.
so it'll be June 15.
June.
After one of the webinars.
If you wanted webinars, so it doesn't say that they're different webinars, it just has 2 alternate dates, so. You know, I can go to the June.
Yeah, I mean, you can ask and then we can, whoever can show up can show up.
There's other places to apply for all additional grants to be our part of the million that we'd have to come up with for this. you know.
Most of the funding opportunities out there now are state funds, and you can't typically match state funds with state funds. You need to find non-federal or private match or municipal match.
Yeah, but it's amazing how many different granting things there's all kinds of private little grants around too. I know 2 people whose families have set up foundations that give grants. Unfortunately, one's in Dallas and the other one's in Philadelphia. But I wouldn't be surprised, but there are some interesting little grants around here too.
Well, I think there'd be a lot of interest locally for rehabbing the dam down there, because I know, you know, birding community likes the place, and recreational users like the place, and parasailers like the place, and obviously you pass the hat around all the homeowners there, and I'm sure they'd all contribute tens of thousands of dollars to save their reservoir, but people always want their dams and their lakes, but then they never seem to want to pay to keep them. So, which is why more dams come out than go in.
It's that the one by Portlandville, the community bought the dam.
There are always exceptions to the rule, Nancy.
Isn't that nice?
It is nice. So anyway, so if you have ideas and you want to think of so if we do go to the climate smart community, I guess I don't want to just come in there and just start throwing out half thought out ideas. I mean, if you have ideas that you want to try to pursue seriously, there's a lot of work obviously that goes into these grant proposals, as many of you know, and as many of you have done these types of grant proposals before. And you know, there's hurdles, but if there's things you think you want that we should apply for as a group, as a board, or as a town, then now's an opportunity.
Well, if we can't think of it, then there's probably not much that we, you know, besides the zoning issues that we really want to solve, so, you know, but it bears,
And
thinking about
And
it.
assuming we get points for our bronze status, right, somewhere in here, there's gotta be, I don't know where the scoring
we're up to
matrix is.
silver.
Silver, sorry.
Yeah,
They're at the highest. There's no more things they can get to. That's why they were changing the committee. It's something about the committee.
for the.
And Alice
Yeah,
stepped down.
there's
Alice stepped down
Climate
with.
Smart, and then there's the energy business, so
Oh.
they were sort of a double committee.
Oh, okay.
So with most
Alice
of
stepped
these,
down because they finished.
No, and Alice is just tired.
Well, I know she is. I know she is too, but she also took it to the highest.
so with most of these state grants, there's, you know, they have a scoring matrix, so it makes sense when you have a potential project to just go through that matrix and see how you think your project will score based on, you know, the points they get. So it'll be 30 points for having silver status or something. So, you know, obviously we have the 30 there, and then they usually break it down, and it's pretty easy to go through and come up with a decent estimate, and you can see whether the project you're thinking about may or may not score highly. But so you have to do a little bit of homework, right? You know, make sure that the project you're proposing has a decent chance, and then, you know, I don't know how it's going to end up working.
I mean, most of what the committee has worked toward is not got much, has more to do with, you know, energy efficiency in the town, and making sure that we're using EVs, which we're getting, and new charging station and that sort of thing, as opposed to climate resilience, which is really what this.
Which is harder to
Right.
know.
So wasn't that it started because of there was grant and a state initiative, and that's wrapping up.
Right,
And then didn't they talk to you last month about whether or not these two committees should, the Climate Smart Task Force and the Conservation Board should maybe join forces? And that was rejected, if I
discussed-
remember last time.
well, we discussed the idea of joining forces, which was one idea, versus having the climate smart / energy committee become a committee, a formal committee, not just for this grant period, but a more formal committee. They probably need to rename themselves. And it might have more to do with, you know, future resilience and that sort of thing. But ideally, it would be a name that would differentiate it from the conservation board, but at the same time, we share a lot of things, and so one suggestion from the committee was that maybe we should, you know, have intermittently co-meetings to kind of define intersections of shared interest and specialties. So that I mean, I spoke up to say, I think there's more force in having two entities who span a larger part of the, shall we say, environmental project. And not just marry them into one committee, because we think a lot more about ag and land and water resources and, you know, keeping buffer zones and natural areas. Their focus has been efficiency, energy efficiency, and that kind of element to the town proper.
Yeah, for us to get started, we were a committee and we came up with a conservation plan. And the ag committee came up with an ag plan. And it sounds like these people the buzzword would be sort of sustainability.
Yeah, exactly.
And if they came up with a sustainability plan in whatever sense, or I almost think maybe a different word should be used, because sustainability is such a worn over word.
Unfortunately,
And I'm not
means
sure.
a lot of different things in different mouths.
Maybe our classicist can come up with a better word. But if you have one, let us know, please. I think a
And
lot of
that's exactly where the discussion went last time, is like, which sort of title, should we have a focus, or just try to make sure that we have a sphere of long-term environmentally sound in the larger sense, planning for Dryden. And then we'll obviously have strong intersections with the conservation board here, but they might be more attuned to how the city is run, what the lights are, what the hard surfaces are, that kind of thing.
they can do. So for the data centers, we'd be concerned about the water usage and risks to adjoining forests. And they could deal with some of the other aspects, the effect on the electrical grid, and maybe they could deal with the fact that apparently the president thinks that he can override local zoning on everything.
I don't think any of us can deal with the president.
Well,
Take that out.
He can't, because it's videoed. You're on record.
Going on to YouTube.
So, yeah, it'll be interesting how this goes.
I want to see the bunny. Can I see Jeannie's bunny?
Oh, you have a bunny? Yeah.
We need a break from the Trump talk.
Oh, yes.
Bunny.
The bunny. That's Bugs.
His name is Dennis. Stop.
Dennis the Menace.
He's a Dutch rabbit.
Oh,
Gray
he's
and white.
so cute. It hurts.
Oh, he's got a good, because I thought Dutch rabbits were partly meat, so I think he's got a really good forever home.
He does. He will not become meat here.
So back to climate smart grants for a second. So Anne's gonna see if it's all right if a subset of us attend the meeting on the 15th. For that meeting, it would be helpful if we had some ideas of proposals we might want to pursue. One of them might be the dam rehabilitation.
Let me just try and close that. How do I end it? I can't?
Hit a button and it should turn just on. Just hit any button.
Okay, there it goes.
Another. Well, if you think of options, so there seems to be, there's $21 million for big projects, up to $2 million, and then $1 million is for smaller grants, 10 to a couple $100,000 for assessment type work, so.
And probably all of them are half have the money? Like,
Yeah.
50%, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about this, I don't know about the smaller ones, but. But the bigger one definitely have a 50% match. I don't think it would qualify.
I'll reach out to Jason about that you guys are gonna do that and attend that meeting and learn more and see, and I'll ask him for an update on on that letter that he got and any discussion that's happened around that.
I thought about one of the granting opportunities in the area is the Triad Association.
Yeah.
They do grants.
Park Foundation of.
They're the same, actually.
Okay, that's true.
So I don't know what the grant requirements are, but you need more than there are opportunities to apply for match. You'd have to, be pretty sure that if you got the grant, you'd be able to come up with a match.
Yeah.
Probably have to demonstrate.
So you'd have to either reach out to them ahead of
I
time.
mean, that's part of the granting process usually. So, I only ever wrote one grant and I got it, but I'm not a major grant writer.
It sounds like you're batting 100 or 1,000.
Right.
Nice work. Like me and grouse hunting.
It's what? What grouse hunting? You wanna know what was the rest of that phrase?
I went grouse hunting once and shot once, got one grouse. Never grouse hunted again.
Okay, so
It's
you're,
a pretty good bird. You can shoot it.
it was there pretty.
Anyway,
I'm registered.
okay, well, thanks for sending that around and thanks for everyone thinking about it. And we don't all need to go to the Climate Smart community meeting, but everyone's welcome, I think. So
I guess I'll put it down.
I think there's plenty of room in the meeting this room.
Where?
They meet on Zoom.
Oh, so it's just a Zoom call. So
Zoom call.
So if we're allowed to attend, I think Anne can send a link to us maybe.
Yeah, I will clarify this moment, in the next couple days.
So is any of the grants though have to be matched? Is that way these work?
It looks like it's all 50% match,
Okay.
unless you can claim to be a disadvantaged community.
Okay.
Which I don't think the town of Dryden would qualify for. If we qualify as disadvantaged, then.
Like this,
Pretty good.
More of 1% than we need.
Anyway, so
Yeah, because I was thinking about like for bigger public buildings and that like for instance the schools, the Dryden High School, middle school, solar panels or something like that for them. That would help with energy costs and also with efficiency. So that's something I was just thinking of, or maybe electric buses. So things like that.
none of this really seems, I mean, the electric buses might fit, but if you look at the criteria there, I mean, it's pretty. Like solar panels wouldn't qualify based on any of these, so they're pretty. They're broad, but they're also fairly.
Yeah.
So. Anyway. I can forward Ann sent the email last week on the 22nd, so if you look at your email, you'll see the website, and you can go look at the grant and see, but.
Yeah.
If you do come to the Climate Smart, come with some well thought out ideas. That we could maybe push forward, again, likely the town would only apply for one, so.
Are they still meeting at 5? Okay, so I put it down.
Okay, and I will get back with the
And it's,
formal.
well, you mentioned 15th, but it's the 17th is the Tuesday. This is April, that's.
Oh, okay, thank you.
And I will try to read your thing before.
Okay, you're up, cluster housing.
Cluster housing, everything is such a mixed bag. It's such a mixed bag trying to control how people do things. And there's also a mixed bag of what's ag land and what's good ag land. Because if you look at state important soils, they do look at soil structure and composition. They also take into effect slope. So like I have really good soil type at my place, but quite a bit of it gets high slopes. So then they classify it down as not statewide importance. The statewide importance is when you can drive a big tractor on it.
The guys who are.
But if you're doing small scale farming, you can do small scale farming on 1 acre. So which is why when they created what's the protected ag land for the town, they wanted all that northern area, a lot of which has to be tiled, right? But it's good soils, but it's flat, so you tile it and then you can drive your big tractor on it. The other part of the farming bit is that they want, if you're driving the big tractor, well, any tractor actually, fields, the less turns you have to make, the more efficient your stuff is. So that's another thing they're concerned about. But all of that has to do with farming being large scale crop farming. And there seems to be a move to have a lot of smaller scale farming at this point. Everything swings one way or the other.
This has what to do with cluster housing?
Why you would need to have regulation over whether you do want to have your little clusters so that you can maintain those big spaces so the tractors don't have to turn. When in fact, if you had the other little houses, you could maybe have other things, other issues. Maybe if the houses could actually end up being small little mini farms and just.
So bear with me because I wasn't at the meeting. I need a little catch up. So in my mind, which is not being informed by anything except what you're describing, if a farmer has 10 acres and he's gonna sell he or she are gonna sell their land to a developer, and that developer could either, the choices we're talking about are like, do we just let the developer develop 10 houses on 10 plots of land, or should we restrict the developer to clustering the houses to keep as much open space as possible? I'm not trying to be slow. I'm just literally trying to understand. If they're selling the land to a developer, they're not going to be keeping the land for farming anyway. Or are they talking about like renting the land back for farming after they sell it?
You have no idea what's going to happen to the land. So leaving it as one large space without houses on it doesn't necessarily mean that it all stays in the same tax number, right? You could still sell it, divide up the land, you just couldn't put houses on it. If it isn't the same tax number, you're not necessarily gonna get a farmer doing anything with it. So,
I'm not following this very well. I mean, it seems to me we're talking about ultimately zoning issues, right?
Exactly.
But from the conservation point of view, there's lots and lots of research to show that from anything else you do with the land, it's better for anything except people, and probably it's better for people to cluster houses and leave larger plots. If it's ag, then it's obviously better for the ag. If it becomes non-ag, we had a discussion, and I don't know much about this. We had a discussion at the Climate Smart thing on microforests.
Microforests.
There's apparently one down behind the Ithaca Beer Company.
Okay.
And it seems to be, a way to literally on very small plots. I mean, I don't know how much ecologically functional they are. I have no idea because I have no idea.
It sounds
what
like a
they're talking about.
name.
I just need to
It's-
look at it, see what they.
It's a name for a cluster of woods.
I don't know. I mean,
Okay,
this was
yeah.
put in,
Yeah,
it was
okay.
established, not as if you like, saved an acre of forest and called it a microforest. It was something
Okay.
established.
Yeah.
Whether it's, low canopy, something,
It was with a plan.
this was, yeah.
It was a
So this just
man-made
came up, and
forest.
So all I'm really saying is, what you do with that 8 acres of land could be ag oriented. Even so, there's more life on an ag oriented than there is on a lawn.
Oh, yeah.
And so, there's more food for migratory stuff, there's more.
I don't disagree with any of that.
Yeah, no, I know nobody does, but all I'm saying is. From any sort of sustainability point of view, the way to go, if you're gonna develop, is to cluster.
Try to do that. But I also would like to see people think about when you say ag lands, that you're trying to protect ag lands, exactly what are you trying to protect?
You can't protect them if you're gonna protect them in proportion to the clustering. Unless you're gonna call it ag. In other words, you can't like take
But
it
then
out
there's
of
taking
yards.
nice places like they did in Ellis Hollow and zoning it all rural residential. When it's actually really good soils. And that can be used for ag in wonderful ways. You know, but because powers that be don't agree with one thing or another, then it gets downgraded and then they just say, okay, we're just gonna make this all housing.
Yeah. and the
Right, so
problem-
the part of the trick is that part of the trick in most zoning, if you look at zoning written all over the country, is that you rarely ever see it saying you can only use it for farming. Typically what it is like, if it's used for farming, you are allowed to put a house on it. So that's where you end up with this inability to control the sprawl. So trying to develop zoning that would keep open spaces available is not something you see in the US that as much at all compared to Europe. But what I think I'm hearing you say is an interest in having zoning that doesn't allow any housing to maintain it only available for farming. Is that what you're saying?
No, there's two things going on here. One is an ag interest for preserving ag land for ag. But
Right.
I was just coming in to say, whatever you do with it, whether you set aside it and somehow amalgamate what would have been allocated to lawns to preserve yet another small ag field out of it or whatever,
Right.
from the conservation of natural systems point of view, the clustered or more dense housing and more land for other open use, except for pesticided conventional agricultures. That's
Like golf courses.
but in large part, if you can cluster your houses and leave more land in larger plots, it's better. And even if everybody plants a great big spruce tree, or if you had a spruce forest, the spruce forest is better. It's better for everything that lives there, except for maybe people, except that most people actually ultimately would rather walk through the spruce forest than have. Sort of thing. My crows might disagree, but that's all right. So I'm just voting for clustered housing on a number of scores without even foreseeing what that land would be used for.
I was at the ag meeting too, and the ag committee members were not opposed. They actually like cluster
Yeah,
housing, it sounded like,
Right.
but they differentiated between cul-de-sac communities and city people who moved out to the country into those estates that are on the roads
Right, so each person has their.
with the big lawns, right, and all the space. They also focused on landowners. So one of the farmers is renting out a field from a landowner. And when those landowners retire, are they going to allow that farmer to continue to farm, or are they going to sell their land off to a developer who will subdivide it into those communities that are attracted to the city? So there was no resolution. They to the situation. There was nothing that you can do to say to people, you can't move here. But they acknowledge that there is an influx of people. But there's no way to really control where they live.
Right.
And that's where they kind of said, well, what they really want is just the preservation of an open field. As opposed to a bunch of big lawns. And in part for practical purposes, they want that big field so that they can actually farm.
And that's where if you have something, like there's a number of organizations that do conservation of ag land, so an ag protection, what are those? Well, the conservation easements actually protect ag land. But there's some other organizations that work on that too. But the problem, as you said, if someone dies, okay, or if they actually, it's even more important if they're trying to retire. A lot of farmers, that's their retirement. They have to get the most money they can for their land so that they can pay for the cataract surgery I just had, or the, cancer surgery or whatever. So
Yeah, and with the skyrocketing land values right now, just in the last 5 years, that's all the more prescient.
You're trying to say that somehow some organization can say that we're taking your asset from you. That's where it gets really hard. So if there's some way that they can be protected, that helps. It's actually easier to deal with people who are more comfortable. Sometimes you have people that are more comfortable and have assets in other ways, and they're willing to leave their land protected or to sell their land at what is an economic loss to another farmer because they like to see the other farmer go. I don't know, those are all individual decisions. And one thing that can help is if somebody's leaning that way, if there is somebody who can offer them guidance on how that can occur. That's good. Like some old farmers, they actually have enough in the bank, or they can sell enough equipment that they could do okay. But if they could find a young farmer to take over that would still be farming. These are the same people who, when they put out a thing for how old does a Holstein cow get? Bear in mind that Cornell used to retire their cows at about 4 years of age because their udders gave out. That in this county, there were people with cows that were 35 years old. They'd kept them a lot of years after they were no longer milking at 35, but that cow was going to die of old age on that farm. These are the kind of people really want to find someone else to take over the farm, to see it going. Yeah. They just need to find who it would be. And they're willing to help them get going on it.
Yeah, Nancy, but I think though that there's also going to be some farmers out there that are just going to try and divide up their land as tight as they can to get as much money as they can.
Yeah.
Not all of them, I mean, there's going to be a lot that are going to try and find other farmers to take over, or just understand the rural nature of the land that they've got and want to keep it that way. And so they won't want to divide it up as tight as possible. But I think that's why there's gotta be something there.
Kids who inherit it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's all kinds, just like in business, there's all kinds.
Sure.
So back to the discussion about clustered housing. So my understanding is right now the town has this 10-acre requirement. So you need 10 acres to build a lot or something, or build a house. Well, you don't need 10 acres, but you can only have one house on a 10-acre
I think so.
parcel. Is that right?
I think so.
And the idea is to move that from that to having multiple houses on several of those 10 acres. And so kind of what we've done now, the town has done on an individual basis on several of those tiny home developments where they've allowed 4 or 5 small houses and kept 5 acres in easement, conservation easement, just making that a more broad rule where you can develop a 10-acre lot with multiple houses clustered within 1 or 2 or 3 acres of that and leave the rest of it as open space. And I think as a concept, I would be supportive of that. Sounds like Ann is, it sounds like, you know, many of us on the
That
board.
was what our zoning was already.
No. It's the 1 house per 10 acres.
No, but there is a cluster thing where if you can put, because
No,
if
we
you
don't have-
have
we don't
100
have that.
acres,
The difference between zoning for it and permission if you want to.
So the zoning requires it versus now you can apply for a variance to allow it. Is my understanding. I might be wrong.
okay, so,
I don't think the town will be having a discussion about cluster housing if they already had cluster housing.
well, they have cluster housing in some form.
They've-
Because
Right,
that's
but
what-
it doesn't there's
They are
cluster
happy with how it's
housing
working.
agreements when you see like the tiny houses, but it's not necessarily requiring that you're protecting a chunk of land in order to consolidate. So they're asking the consultant to provide language on how would you do that so that you don't end up with lots of 1 acre houses. You have clustered housing within protected open space.
Well, except, okay, and then we come into for the cluster housing that we do have, like what Dolph did in Ellis Hollow. He was allowed to build more houses because they were clustered on the given acreage. But then, so the rest was considered a conservation easement.
Yeah.
Then, who monitors the conservation easement? And that's another thing we were running into. You know, if you're doing this, how do you control what happens on whatever land is left? And is that your goal, to control what happened, or, you know, do you care what happens on that larger chunk? But it sounds like what you're talking about is the town wants, if you have 10 acres, the town wants to allow cluster housing of whatever, whether it be mini houses or you could pack mech mansions in one corner.
So
And then
So
the rest has to be one tax map number.
So
in
here's the
the
thing is the town hasn't made any decisions. The committee, the zoning rewrite team has asked the consultant to get language to bring back for them to assess on what are our choices as a town. So they can then make a recommendation for the town board on what they think we should do.
Yeah,
So I just want to make sure that's clear. It's not like there's a predetermined plan on that's what should happen. It's, you know, these are the team working on this. They've asked the expert that's been hired to, what are our choices? How could we do this? Just like all those questions you're asking, what would the answers be? What would our choices and the answers be?
right,
Um,
and that's lovely, and I'm pretty sure that since it's been, different kinds of clustered housing has been promoted in so many places, in so many ways, that expert will probably come up with some interesting choices that we haven't even thought about. Another thing about clustered housing that you have to think about is shared driveways. You know, are they gonna have shared driveways, and what kind of problems you get with that?
One of the big things you have to worry about, that was septic. If you don't have municipal septic, the health department here in Tompkins County requires any new lot to be big enough so you can put 2 septic systems on it.
Each 100 feet from the
The
well.
Yeah, so you
Yeah,
can't,
these are all things the zoning will have to address. So
Yeah.
the first step is there even an option in order to do clustered housing in a way to protect open space? And
Yeah,
then we have to go from there. But don't worry that these other questions aren't going to come up. I assure you. That's
oh, I'm sure they will.
priority.
Right, if you don't look at it.
Ahead of time, they'll come up when you have the public hearing. So,
it's like when a Schickle proposed having like a Boiseville in the town of Dryden, and they wouldn't let him build it.
Well, but he did build a little mini thing in Freeville.
But they have sewer there,
Yeah, well, I'm just saying.
yeah. Cause he had to develop this special sewer system over there in Boyceville. A couple places so that it would take care of all the
Yeah.
sewage.
Yeah, and he did it.
And he did it, but Dryden wouldn't let him do it.
Don't go wetland.
He proposed.
That's because we want to fill our wetlands and dry them. I don't want to use their, anyway. It sounds like this is certainly a thing that's gonna be revisited by the planning board as they do the zoning rewrite, and we'll welcome the opportunity to provide some input on that. The clustered housing I'm talking about, not sewage treatment.
Well, I don't know, sewage treatment is right up our line.
Yeah, I like sewage treatment, it's pretty cool, but I don't think we're gonna start running sewer lines around the town.
No, I
Big
mean, but
town.
it's septic and septic flow and,
Craig raises a good point, but I mean, we could, I don't think it's our role to find all the
Oh, no.
little pros and cons of any issue.
it's always
Unless we're.
good to bring them up though, so you're aware of what, oh, what about? Sometimes those what abouts are like a very important things.
Water in and water out are two major considerations of any home site. And that was one of the criticisms of the mini houses in Alice Hollow, is not being able to go deep to well because of shallow bedrock and. I guess they're.
And if you want that, well, my sister doesn't want to drink my water anymore because it's only 36 feet deep and I live on a gravel bed. So I doubt that it's through rock. But I had, whatever it is, I'm in pretty good shape after X number of years, so. Well, don't test it then.
Does anyone have a new angle on cluster housing that we haven't quite tackled yet? Before we move on, no. We're gonna skip over zoning rewrite, because I think that was what we've been talking about. I think most of the update was. And it sounds like Nancy wasn't there. But it's sounds like a lot of discussion was on cluster housing, so we covered that quite thoroughly.
I
No,
just like,
let's-
one
I'm
thing
sorry.
for future, does anybody have a model for cluster housing on a large sort of town zoning scale? As to how
Yeah.
it worked?
England and France.
Yeah,
No
well,
joke.
there.
I vote we all take a field trip. We get some train tickets and we spend 2 weeks checking them out.
Norway's a good place too.
Sure, the tax.
Norway would be fantastic.
Good
Good with that.
That's all I want to boondoggle.
Italy is pretty sweet. Open to Italy.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind looking at the cluster housing in Morocco. I haven't been to Morocco yet.
I've never
Well,
been to Morocco. I'd love to see that.
Next summer, August 1st, go watch the eclipse.
There you go.
Spring, are you saying that the town is agreeing to pay for us to go there? Was
That's what I heard
No.
Spring say.
That's what I
The
heard.
town has no money.
It's in minutes, on video, you can't walk it back.
We're a volunteer group, right? So we all have to pay our way.
I don't know, my neighbor's from Holland and I was asking him something about why, is he thinking he'd ever go back to Holland? And he was like, are you kidding? Like he gets to build this house here. He says, in Holland, everybody has to be close to each other. There's no land, there's anything. Yeah,
Well, this has got a special issue.
Yeah,
lots of people and not much.
well, most of Europe's like that.
Exactly. In England, it's in the next town, it's 2 miles over. I'm thinking, it's hard to think of a different town 2 miles over. We'd think it was the same town if it was only 2 miles to get
But
there.
it's actually a break in between.
Gene, can you share your screen? Can you share that map that you shared with us today? We'll jump into the Bob Garden.
To Bob's.
Sorry, I didn't put it on the agenda.
Yeah, but I thought we were gonna talk about Bob's trees.
Lauren, do you have to give her permission
Oh,
to share?
yes, probably.
Participants,
Where did participate?
there, participants, that should come up first, and then you should be able to give her a status.
And
You
host
can put
tools,
the
there we
sheet in.
are. Share.
Share screen is top.
No, Lauren doesn't want to share screen. He wants to let Jean share her screen.
Allow all participants to do that.
You should be able to share now.
You should be able to share, Gene. There we go.
Thank you.
There you go.
Look at that nice green spot.
Can you zoom in on that? There you go. Perfect.
Okay, so this is the area where we were thinking about planting. And it is only 0.1 acres. So I have to send this to the Nature Conservancy to show them where we're interested in. So you pull in here, this is kind of a gravel parking area. There's a trail that comes to here. There's a kiosk right here with a map, and then the trail goes off into the wetland over here. So this is where we were thinking about planting. And then this is kind of what I was thinking. So these trees, I just kind of randomly plopped those on there, but they're like about 20 feet apart.
Okay.
And so I was kind of thinking of doing like the edge of that kind of grassy area.
Mhm.
When we were there, I thought it would look nice to kind of have a line of them as you kind of walked in. And then we could put like the plaque maybe at this corner one. And so these are the species I was thinking of. I'd like to do things that kind of already are native, like particularly right in this location, like things that I can see when you walk through the preserve there. So there's a lot of red maple in there. There's also silver maple there, but I don't really want to plant that. So red maple, sugar maple, we had talked about serviceberry. There's a lot of different species of serviceberry, but they're essentially the same price. And then swamp white oak, which I didn't necessarily see in there, but I think it would do really well there. So this is just kind of what I suggested, just so we can kind of get a budget together. So this was the prices of the trees that I bought wholesale in the spring. So, you know, they might be a little bit more because everything gets more expensive, but it gives you a rough idea. We can get mulch for no cost. Fencing and stakes, I just estimated like maybe $150. So the last bronze plaque that I bought to put on a bench was about $500 just for the plaque. And then we'd have to figure out, like, do we want to affix it to a little square of concrete or a little square of granite or like a natural stone? I'm not quite sure what that would cost, but I figured probably estimate another $300 to $500 for the actual like thing we affix the plaque to. So if we want to do all that, I think this is our total estimated cost that we want to fundraise. So do people think that's a reasonable amount to raise between now and the fall for Bob? I feel like it's doable.
It's
I think so.
Yeah, I think it's doable.
Yeah.
easy.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, actually, as you mentioned benches, I'm wondering if there's, if we think about it, like facing the plaque, facing the kiosk at the moment or something like this. I mean, he was instrumental in getting that in there, as my understanding.
He donated a bunch of land that is the preserve. Like-
Yeah, that, and I think the kiosk, well, I can't remember, all the details that I should go back and look at his book, but, I was wondering if a small bench or something would be, you know, one thing to put it on that would have a different functionality.
Oh, yeah. Rather than a stone.
Yeah, it just wouldn't get covered up easily.
It might get walked off with more easily though.
The rail trail
Rail trail benches,
benches,
walking off.
I mean, the rail trail might be able to say how those, where the benches are from, and I believe that, I mean, we could probably get Rick to install it the way he does for the rail trail if we asked, but
Yeah, I imagine the rail trail ones are probably like footers set in concrete. That's probably what they are.
yeah.
So that's not really that hard to install. You just, you know, especially if they have machinery, they just auger a couple holes, you put some dry concrete in there, set the bench frame, and that's pretty easy to do. So the benches I've bought for the city, I get these like, you know, the compressed composite kind of plastic wood benches, and they're probably $800. They're
I'll bet
yeah.
we still make, I'll bet from donations, we'd easily get that.
Can I say, if you do put a bench in, someone said having it facing the kiosk, but I would think. Now, it might be near the kiosk, so it's easy to get up and look at the kiosk to see what it says, but. If I was Bob, I wouldn't want to be looking at the kiosk, I want to be
Yeah.
looking at the woods.
Or it could face out into the field, kind of
Yeah.
look back at the
Yeah.
trees that were planted.
I think,
So I
Here to
didn't
pick up.
ask the Nature Conservancy about a bench. They seem very open, like she's like, do whatever. And I was like, can we pull out invasives? And she was like, go for it. So I feel like they're pretty like, they're not super worried about what we want to do there, but I just want to put that out there that I didn't ask about a bench. So I'd have to vet that with her.
Yeah,
Well, it's not exactly a gorgeous natural area at the moment.
Right.
Has the trees already been purchased?
No, I was just getting a budget together so that we would know what kind of what our target to raise was. And then as we get into the summer, I can, we can settle on what trees we want exactly. And,
Yeah.
and we could even, we could just kind of have this as a loose budget and then know, like, if we raise way more, we can afford a bench or,
Yeah.
there's also those Leopold benches that people build, but we just have to make sure we figure out how it doesn't walk off. But that would be a less expensive option.
Yeah, the Finger Lakes Land Trust, they just chain them to all their spots, so they have those Leopold benches, and they just drill a hole and have a little bit of chain, and it's more symbolic, I mean, someone come out with bolt cutters,
Yeah.
but, it's
what's a Leopold bench?
just Aldo Leopold designed the bench, it's basically just 2x10s, it's really easy to build, I mean, like, I could build,
Look it up.
they're,
Look it
they're,
up now.
it looks like I don't know, it's just a bench, looks like a leaf.
Does that
Find it.
It's like an
does
apron.
that composite material last longer than like a pressure treated wood?
Yeah, it lasts for like ever.
Oh, does it?
Plastic, Steve.
Yeah.
So that's what a Leopold bench looks like. It's just very simple.
Right. Right. How tall are these trees?
I would say the ones that we buy, what I priced out was a 3/4 inch, 3 1/4 inch caliper trunk. And so I would say those are probably like they're taller than me. So I would say they're probably like 6 feet tall, planted in the ground.
Yeah.
They're decent sized trees.
Yeah.
They're
Is
not
that
like
right?
little saplings.
Is that price with the gel on the roots, or is that? just
That
for-
is with the gel.
Okay,
Uh-huh.
yeah, so that's the high end price. That's just so cool to me that you can plant bare root trees that big.
Yeah.
Really
Yeah.
want to try that.
Yeah, the only I guess the only comment I have about is did we want to consider, instead of like real common sugar maples and red maples, try some other species that's a little less common but still native?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we
know,
could.
I like the swamp white oak.
Mm-hmm.
I know they're real durable trees, and they really last a long time. They don't break in storms. They're very resilient trees, and I love the serviceberry. But I just think there's sugar maples and red maples everywhere,
Yeah.
and so that's why I was just thinking it might be nice to have something else there. But if it's too hard to get anything like that, then those maples will be fine.
No, it's not necessarily more difficult to get something else. I'm trying to think of something that I could suggest. If you want native, but also, so not all species can transplant bare root, and a lot of the native ones, like hickories and stuff like that, we don't
Yeah.
really transplant
Yeah,
bare root.
tap roots.
Yeah. I've gotten like shagbark hickory from the nursery, and they sell those in either B&B, ball and burlap, which are a huge pain to plant, or they sell them also sometimes in like these like cloth bags that are kind of buried in the ground, and then they pull up the whole thing and sell it to you. So those are
Right.
a little more manageable than the B&B, but those trees tend not to be as big. Like those ones are probably only like maybe 3 feet tall, maybe
Right.
4 feet tall. They're
Yeah.
just smaller. Cucumber magnolia would be really cool.
Well, that would be cool.
I don't know
Yeah.
if we could do that bare root though. We might have to do that B&B,
Yeah.
which if the highway department wants to dig us a hole, then it's not as bad, but
Yeah.
How do you
they are
plant-
kind of a pain to move.
How big a hole do you need for those bare root trees?
That's how big the ball is.
You kind of dig the hole depending on what the root mass looks like, and it's really like that's species dependent and actually like individual tree dependent. But so a lot of times it's a wider hole, but it's a lot shallower, so it's not so hard to dig. The B and Bs are like deep, and they're
how
really
deep?
just the trees are actually just heavy to move around, and like you roll it
Sure.
into the hole, and if it's not the right size, you gotta like roll it back out. It's just it's a real pain to plant without
Oh,
equipment.
so when you say not deep, are you saying 1 foot, 2 foot, and the deep ones are 4 foot?
I would say like probably most of our bare root trees, it's like 2 feet, maybe down to 3 feet, but probably not that deep
And-
even.
And those are the ones that are, you said are more shallow and
Yeah,
so
the bare root ones.
deep and about 4 feet wide diameter, 4 feet diameter?
Maybe sometimes I would say probably more like 3 feet wide.
Okay, so then the ones that you say are deep, those are gonna be like 4 foot deep?
Yeah, probably like at least 3 to 4. Man, probably not 4, probably 3. It's the digging the hole, but also just moving the tree. Like those root balls are hundreds of pounds. It's really difficult to move that. So like in order for me to get it from the city up to here, like I gotta roll it onto my trailer and bring it out, and then you gotta roll it out to the site and dig the hole and flop it in and pull it out if it's not the right depth. And it's just it's a real pain in the butt.
That's where you
If you
want to have tractors.
a certain species like cucumber magnolia are awesome.
I think that'd be cool.
I've planted a bunch of those down at, well, those are hard to transplant pretty big as well. The ones I've planted down in Stewart Park were probably some of the smaller size, like I was saying, like they're maybe they're 4 feet tall.
How quickly do they grow?
They seem like they take a minute to establish. They take probably a couple years to establish before they really start putting growth on. And I've also had a few of that I planted down at Stewart Park that just died over the winter. I don't know why. Like they seemed like they established and they were doing well, and like year 3, they just didn't leaf out the next summer. So they're a little more temperamental.
Do you
Whereas
like-
like these ones are like, these are bulletproof, like these will probably all make it on the first shot.
So, how about deer eating them? That magnolia, did the deer eat the magnolia?
We do have a fence around it, but it's not a super fortified fence, and the deer down at Stewart Park don't seem to bother the new trees too much. But I would recommend putting some fencing up at least for the first year, just so that we really reduce the browse to almost nothing on those.
Well,
And
also
then-
because you were suggesting that the other trees would be tall enough that the
I would
deer
still
probably
put
couldn't
fencing
kill
on
it, but then that magnolia you described would be shorter, so that's why I was
Yeah, that
wondering.
would definitely need fencing. I think we should have fencing on all of them for the first year
I
or
mean, we could
2.
put up a temporary deer fence, for a couple of years that,
Yeah, we
be
kind of talked about that too, if we wanted to do that.
small area, and then
Mm-hmm.
we could plant, more shrubs underneath it, and they wouldn't have to be so big, and,
Yeah,
just some T-posts and a couple
Yep.
100 feet of, plastic deer fencing. It
hmm
wouldn't be permanent, obviously you would have to keep an eye on it if a tree fell over on it or something, but
right.
they're relatively easy to maintain, and it's not long-term, it's just to let stuff get established, so.
Yeah. Do you think that would be significantly more, that would probably be more expensive than what I have here
But
though?
not that much.
Not a
more.
lot more.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'd be, we'd kind
No.
of tossed that idea around, right? And we'd kind of talked about that when we were out there, right? Didn't
Yeah.
we?
Yeah, I think if we go maybe a little more conservative with the budget, jack the prices up and then just start a fundraising campaign, and we'll see if we're really
Yeah.
short, then we'll just get tree tubes, or
Yeah.
individual.
Yeah.
fences. If we have enough, then we can build
So
the Cadillac out there.
the grassy bit, is it grassy because it gets mowed once a year? Why
I
is,
don't believe so. So when we were out there, it looked like it hadn't been mowed in several years because there was some,
There's trees.
like, there were some young aspens that were getting sizable, like they'd been there for several years. There was some multiflora rose, there was some buckthorn that had kind of established. So I think it was maybe something they've mowed in the past, but not recently, not in probably the last 5 years, I'd say.
I think it's just deer suppressing tree succession.
I don't know, I mean, the deer population there is not huge.
Okay,
It's hunted right behind there.
okay.
So it might be that it had been mowed. If you wanted to
had, and I
stay as grassy, you might want to think about mowing it before you take a brush hog out there before
Well, you
you.
have to take those young trees out, there are things coming up, the woody stuff coming up.
So it should get brush hogged before you plant, and then if you put deer fencing on, you're not gonna be able to get in there and brush hog as well, but yeah.
I don't think it's so dense that we need a brush hog. I think you could go out and just remove the individual volunteers that are there.
Multiflora rose and that sort of stuff is over in this area.
Okay,
So
down here.
that's definitely not been touched between the main road here. This is
Yeah,
all.
this is super dense in here of multiflora and honeysuckle and stuff like that. So I think what we had talked about last time was to kind of get a rough budget together so we could have an idea of what kind of our target was. So if we say, we're looking to raise like $2,000-ish, if not, a little more, we could get more extravagant, but for $2,000, we could do something that we'd be happy with. Then I think the next step would be to put something out for the newsletter and get the rail trail to publish something like start donating, and this is the, send a check to the town and put in the memo like
Send it to
Bob's
the-
Memorial or whatever.
They can, it has to be labeled as,
Yeah.
Oh, they can,
We
you're
established that last week.
okay.
Yes.
has to be designated.
And it's just, we're just gonna do trees, right? No flowers or plants or anything like that in the area, natives?
I don't think so. This seems like it's pretty heavy goldenrod. So it might be hard to get anything herbaceous to establish there without having like a really more
Yeah,
developed program.
And Jean, I don't know what your impression was, but my impression has always been is that whatever, that whole parking lot and that area was not great soil. It's
Yeah.
always looked kind of like it was, fashioned quickly to make an entryway, but there was no idea that it would be fostering good
Yeah.
deep soils. I don't know. I mean, it's, the parking.
Yeah, I'm not sure what it would be like out there. Maybe we should go dig a test hole.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, this is all just
down there with my
compacted gravel.
PX
And who
bit.
was it? Was it Gwen or was somebody else telling us that
Access to one.
there used to be like old like decomposing tractors and stuff like parked out in here before this was all a preserve. This was just kind of like a farm vehicle graveyard or something.
Brownfield site.
I can't remember. I wouldn't surprise me. It just has that look. I don't know how it was created. I wonder if the people, I've just gotten to know a little bit, or at least just met the people at the house to the left of it up there. To the west of them, and they would, I think they'd be excited about this. They seem really interested in.
Yeah.
Naturalizing stuff.
Thinking like even with a stone tool and just sort of checking out to see if that actually was an area where there was an old house foundation underneath, or
Gwen probably knows.
Yeah, that would be
I'm
good.
almost certain, and I'll look at Bob's book, but see what the history of the entry site is.
Yeah.
Now I'm thinking maybe it was Bob who told me that when we walked, because we looked at this spot for those chestnut trees when we were talking about that a while back, and I walked around here with Bob, and I think maybe he was the one who told me when he was a kid that this was just like a farm equipment graveyard.
Yeah,
And like, that's kind of why it was flat and open, because they were kind of using it for that.
Makes sense.
I don't know.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me.
So if we, I feel like we should, if we want to plant in the fall, we should start moving forward and start fundraising.
Mhm.
So maybe the next step is I could write something up about like what we're doing and how you donate, and reach out to the rail trail folks too, to let them know we're doing it, and write something up that we can put in the next town newsletter, which I don't know when that goes out. Lauren, do you know when the next deadline is to submit something?
It's usually around the
Yeah.
first.
Soon, yeah. I'll
Is it
talk with
monthly?
Patsy and I'll send you, I'll talk with her tomorrow and send you dates.
Okay.
Did we talk about adding a webpage to somewhere in the town website where we can advertise this and promote it and kind of lay out whatever we put in the newsletter for people who don't see the newsletter? That the, rail trail can, if they talk about it at their meeting, they can point people to a website where they can see where they donate, and have all the information. Just,
We should have it at Dairy Days.
Yeah, I was thinking a poster.
well, I'm thinking, yeah, I know there's lots of options for advertising. I'm thinking, the question
Something.
is, can we do something on the
On
website
the
that'll be there
Right.
for the duration?
I,
Every other idea is
Patsy
great.
and I are in charge of the website, so yes, we can do that.
I'm just
So
thinking,
it's-
how many people go to the website? Do you have anything that might
If-
tracks traffic?
If the rail trail committee sends out emails, they've got hundreds of people on their email.
Oh, yes,
list,
the
and-
rail trail
And they
gets
can
it.
point them to a
It's
website.
just a place so people can go.
It's just.
Oh, so you say
So I
go
can,
here.
I can make it a posted notice with a web redirect or whatever, or information. We can put it on the exterior bulletin board, around here.
Yeah.
I think just having the rail trail people post it on their Facebook page too, that
Yeah.
reaches hundreds of people.
And it'll end up on Nextdoor.
Mhm.
And it'll go out, which is good.
Okay, so we need to get this thing written, get the basics written up. And probably instructions for what people do to donate.
You feel free to share a draft, Gene, and if you want some comments or
Yeah.
you can just put it together.
I'll help.
Yeah, I'll give it a stab and send
I
it out,
really-
and then, yeah.
Really
Everyone can
appreciate all
comment,
the
we
effort
can
you put
edit it.
into this. I really appreciate the effort you put into this, Gene. Thank you.
Yeah, and you might show
Yeah.
a sample of a
Oh,
check
sure.
where to write on the check that it's for Bob. If you're sending because
Mhm.
not everybody knows how
Yep.
to write the note on the check. It's amazing how many people don't know how to write a check.
I know, I think, yeah, there's a lot of people who are like, I don't even have a checkbook, but we don't have like a Venmo account or something that we can put
Yeah.
out there, so
Gonna say, if
people are
you-
gonna have to mail in checks.
Yeah. It's gonna be,
Can you do that
Challenging
with a
for
bank
people.
check?
Yes.
Is there a place to write?
Yeah,
Okay.
there's no depends on you, but my bad bank lets you do it, so doing every other bank does. CFCU has the absolute worst online banking experience ever. Everyone with them just because of it. Anyway, I'm digressing now. Thanks very much, Gene. I really appreciate it. So
Sure,
I think
of
this
course.
is a worthwhile endeavor, so.
And your bank is gonna go for a new beginning soon. It's my bank too.
Yes,
Um,
CFCU is,
Turns out.
CFCU is changing its name to New Beginnings.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
it's weird. Yeah.
So we're running out of time here if we hope to stay within our 2 hour limit, and there's probably a lot of discussion on the rec commission update. I know there was a flurry of emails today.
right,
We're all lastminute.com on this board. And there were final plans sent out, but a while ago, but I don't think we actually got that attachment, Craig.
the attachment didn't come, I mean, the attachment was lost in the revised, but is that it? Oh,
What's the gist of it, Craig, for those who don't have,
Well, there's two,
if you can just explain for folks on the computer, or I can,
um,
Craig.
there's two mock-ups there. One for a large field, well, one of them, they showed what the committee was asking for, but then they also showed that because of the wetland setbacks, it really wasn't possible.
Okay,
So then they did a smaller mock-up on what will fit into that area.
so why do the one that's not feasible? Just
I
to,
guess they just wanted to
Still
show
want the
people
rapid
that,
Before they calculated in the buffer zone, right?
yeah. And once they did, they realized that one couldn't fly.
Right.
you presumably have these in attachment, can you share these with the board, Craig? Or,
And try again, yeah,
If you've got it, then you can just send it directly. It's just when you applied,
yeah.
it got lost.
so this is just up the hill from the Dryden Highway Department, if you can all visualize this. Where's our camera? Where's up there? I don't know, this is even gonna work. Is that in focus, sort of? So the highway's down here and
This is
then
what they think.
I think the road somewhere up here maybe, and anyway, Craig will try to share this, but we'll get
That's
the
the
idea.
first one. That's the one that they can't do, right?
No parking or?
This is the one they can do, because I think all this is in a wetland maybe, but
Oh, wait a minute, I see, those are parking. Right?
Yeah.
There are only 10 cars.
anyway, I'm glad they are considering the wetlands and impacts to wetlands. That's refreshing.
I think they have to.
Do they address parking here?
They
Yeah,
have,
this-
they have about
Second-
10 spots here.
Second version of those, concept A and B was the sub concepts. They had some form
They have
of,
some parking here.
it said.
So their cost estimate comes in at $1.7 million. Which is bargain these days, I guess. Wow.
They said concept
floors are
A and
expensive.
B of the smaller one, which was concept 3. Brings access to the vacant lot from East Main Street. And concept B adds a parking lot with approximately 25 spots off the access road on the vacant lot. In both, we've added a vehicular restricted barrier and no entry sign to the highway department.
Which will be ignored.
Well, they tried.
I was gonna say, if it was me, there's a whole lot of parking right there. That's probably what I'd do. I'd pull in and I'd park and I'd figure out how to get in.
Natural compost, toilet, no heat, no electricity, $100,000.
I just sent it.
Oh, great.
You have it.
Very.
There you go, folks. Check your email. Oh,
Check out Hill new header.
There's a meeting tomorrow night at DRYC where the
okay.
consultants are supposed to be there to talk more about it.
There you go. If anyone's interested, there's a meeting tomorrow night. DRYC you can attend. All these meetings are public meetings.
Yeah, oh yeah, they're a public meeting
Where do they meet? Here?
right here,
Okay, what time?
7.
7 PM tomorrow night. You all aren't doing anything and wanna comment on the ball fields and your
So
opportunity.
what are they? They look, what kind of ball fields? They look soccer fields?
This one I think would be kind of an all-purpose. I think the smaller one they're looking at would be more of a practice field type thing. Cause it wouldn't be large enough.
Oh, you have two
So
here.
I'm gonna propose
No,
that
two
with,
different proposals.
with Lauren sharing this information, nothing's gonna get built in the next month that we can,
No.
we can discuss what all this means when we've all had a chance to
Wait a
look at
minute,
it.
let me look at it this
So-
way.
Is there any further business?
Is
So
there
this
any
one-
discussion of like not developing this, or we're just like finding out how we can develop it?
This
So I
one
think
was-
the impetus was to build ball fields in that whole area, and, you know, have a rec. So this is kind of a feasibility study almost, I think. I'm assuming one of the alternatives would be a do nothing alternative. But it's just laying the options out there for the town. If you want ball fields on property that you
This is what
own,
it's gonna
this
be.
is what you can get on the property you have. This is what it's gonna cost, and then it's up to the town to decide.
Yeah.
But this one's
Right.
on the wetland.
You know, part of the secret process, they should have, right, that was just. So as part of the secret process, I'm assuming they would look at that, you know, all the alternatives and determine which one. They go for, and they justify the other ones, but I mean, they're trying to minimize their impact by not filling wetlands and staying out of the buffer. But anyway, we'll have copies of it to review, and we'll have a more thorough discussion next month, and we can. Maybe after tomorrow's meeting, there'll be some additional information. from the-
Should be,
from
yeah.
the CHA.
So it's one thing to construct it, but something, just in case I'm not there, something for people to consider if they build this one on the wetland. Maintenance is going to be a pretty big issue, and actually this one too was so big. I think the wetland's gonna make maintenance a disaster.
Well, we're not gonna be building it, made wetland, so. That's
Well,
the whole point.
But this one is in the wetlands, apparently.
I don't know.
This
It doesn't look like it to me. When I look at the Google Maps, it looks like it's just a grass field right next to it there.
It's,
Yeah, I mean, we need an overlay of the wetland.
but you can have something that looks, I
We
can
need it- we
show
need-
you places at my spot place where.
We need an overlay of the wetland delineation, which is on here. So the buffer is north of. The wetland delineation line is on this map. On this plan. Anyway, I'm tabling this until next month, so. Are there any other topics for discussion?
Isn't that delineation of the wetland?
Um,
Well, actually, it's a straight line though, so it can't be.
This is the wetland delineation right here, and here's the buffer, here and here.
So these, all this blue has nothing to do with wetland?
Correct. The wetland's all here. North, we're not going across into the wetland,
Okay.
that's the whole point of restricting it to this little lot. Anyway. I'm gonna motion to adjourn, we have a second?
Okay.
Second, and all in favor? Thanks, everyone. See you next month.
All right.
If that's not wetland, why can't
Bye.
it come down here too then?
I don't know answers to your questions, these are good questions, but. I think, Nancy, you need to go to the meeting